Chapter 1. It was Earth Day, the first day of the dedication ritual. Weak rays of early morning sunlight broke through the clouds, but the snow continued to fall over Ehrenfest. The hibernating city lay still under its heavy mantle in quiet anticipation of the day when the Knight's Order would deal with the Lord of Winter. In the lower city, few people other than soldiers who guarded the streets and the gates went outside of their homes. Not even the most ambitious of merchants bothered to do any business that day. It was the day of rest, after all. So neither the Ottmer Company, the Gilberta Company, the Plantain Company, the legendary Italian restaurant, or any of the other exclusive stores would open that day. It was much too cold anyway, so cold that spring felt an eternity away. Within the confines of the temple, in the chambers of the orphanage director, Myne stirred under her thick covers and woke from her dreamless sleep at the faint sound of Delia moving about her chambers. She knew the drill already. She needed to wait in bed until the room was warm enough and until Delia and Rosina got everything ready for her bath. After her bath, Delia cleaned up while Rosina dressed her in her ceremonial robes. "I'll never cease to wonder at how you've never had to replace these robes, my lady," Rosina said, as she tied the silver sash around Myne's slender waist. Myne smiled at the mirror and nodded.
Karina's workshop is just wonderful, isn't it? She made these robes with my future growth in mind.
I confess, each year Miss Karina adjusted the length of the robe. I wondered if maybe that would be the year you'd finally outgrow it, Rosina said with a gentle laugh as she straightened the fabric and carefully brushed away a speck of lint from the sleeve. "I'm glad you can still wear them this year." Myne smiled at her through the mirror. In truth, she had been the mastermind behind the design of her ceremonial robes, but just like many other things she dreamed up, she let others take credit for it. It was safer that way. She had never had to replace the ceremonial robes, though she had been a little concerned during this year's fitting. Now that this was her final year as a shrine maiden, and she was nearing her coming of age, she was as close as she'd ever been to outgrowing her robes at last. She'd quickly run through the numbers as autumn had approached and had had Karina make the alterations as soon as possible in case this was the year she needed to replace them. Thank goodness she was so slender and short for her age. She was almost a head shorter than Tully, and the top of her head didn't even reach Lutz's shoulder. Even Frida was taller than her, which was patently unfair. Myne had been doing her best all these years to eat well, exercise, and keep in good health, so why hadn't she grown as much as her friend who also suffered from the devouring? Yet, it was not the length that had them all worry, but the bust. For, small though Myne was in stature, she had inherited Aoife's generous proportions, and they'd had to make some serious alterations this year. Yet Karina and her craftswoman had done wonders, and no one could tell where the original robe ended and the alterations began. "To think this will be your last year to wear it for the dedication ceremony, Sister Myne," Rosina sighed. "Once spring prayer is over, we'll be starting preparations for your move to the nobles' district once you come of age in the summer." Myne trembled slightly, but did not let her smile falter.
"Yes, but that is still a way away, and there's much to do until then."
She watched Delia pick one of her many hair sticks from the box.
"No, not that hair stick. The new one, if you please. Tilly made it for me for this occasion."
Rosina slipped the hairpin on Myne's midnight blue hair and stepped back to observe her handiwork, scrutinizing her mistress from the crown of her head to the tip of her toes. Sister Myne had on a serene expression which befitted her pretty features. Over the years, the baby fat and the roundness of her face had given way to a refined countenance with delicate features. She had a noblewoman's mien. Justly so. In front of Rosina was a product of years of hard work and training. She was Rosina's crowning achievement. The chestnut-haired attendant nodded in satisfaction before calling down to Fran. "Sister Myne is ready!" There would be no breakfast that day. She was forbidden from eating or drinking until she was done with the dedication ritual, but that was fine by her. She was looking forward to brunch with Ferdinand after they were done filling up the day's quota of chalices, and she knew for a fact that there would be crepes flavored with Peru juice that morning. They had a long-standing tradition of eating close to fourth bell during the dedication ritual, during which time they rewarded themselves and their attendants with what would be considered a lavish feast during a time of the year when most would be making sure to keep an eye on the stored food so it would last the rest of the winter. But then, if the Archduke continued to give them more and more chalices to fill up, it was only natural that they be rewarded with extra food, correct? And so, because of their hard work, Myne's cooks did their best, and Ferdinand's cooks did their best, so they would not be outdone by their counterparts, and everyone in the orphanage got to enjoy a better than usual breakfast, even if it was a little later in the day than usual.
Crepes.
Myne hummed under her breath in happy anticipation as she walked the coldly pristine hallways of the temple's noble section. She passed the high priest's chambers and then the familiar high bishop's chambers until she came at last to the door of the dedication chamber. An attendant opened the door for her, and she stepped through, finding Ferdinand already within. He stood waiting for her at the far end of the room, tall and imposing in his immaculate high bishop robes. The rest of her attendants remained outside, and the door closed behind her so that only she and Ferdinand remained alone inside the room. Acutely aware of his scrutiny, Myne squared her shoulders and walked, glided really, toward where he waited for her. They said their perfunctory greetings before they knelt at the altar, placed their hands on the red carpet, and prayed.
I am one who offers praise and gratitude to the gods. Pretty sure that was also you, Patrick.
Yeah, I missed the cue.
You can do it. 1, 2, 3.
I am one who offers prayers
prayers
and gratitude to the gods.
Great. They were praying their all when We're trying, you guys. They were praying their all when Myne felt it. It began as a slight prickle in the back of her neck before a strange sensation overcame her. It was as if all her life she'd been underwater with muffled sounds and blurry sights, and she just emerged from that lukewarm bath to find that everything was just much too loud, much too colorful, much too hot, much too bright. There was no other way to describe how she could sense the mana surging all around her, as if she had developed some kind of new superpower. She could even sense the amassed mana in the chalices they were filling, and, most mortifying, she could feel waves and waves of her own mana mingling with Ferdinand's in the shining carpet.
Myne.
Ferdinand called out her name the exact moment she was on her feet and moving as far away from him as possible. She hid her face in her hands with a cry, heart thundering as her face was burned with shame. No, how to fix that. He told her about this a few years back, about mana sensing, but she never in her wildest dreams would have thought that it would happen this way and that she'd end up sensing him, her mentor, her teacher, and her friend. The thought occurred to her that just as she could sense him, he was now able to sense her. She gasped at the realization and put down her hands from her face long enough to glance his way. He looked shocked? No, that wasn't it. He looked stricken, appalled. He almost looked sick, but ever the consummate noble, he composed himself in the blink of an eye the moment their eyes met and stepped in her direction. Myne gave a small cry before she sprinted away from Ferdinand. He called her to no avail, and she was at the door faster than Stifabreeze, the goddess of the gale.
Please, let me go, please,
she said pleadingly without turning around.
We will talk later then,
came his voice, sounding distant. She did not need to be told twice. She yanked on the handle and ran out of the holy chamber. End of chapter.
Da da da.
Da da da. Yes. All right. So Red Tempest is asking what happened to Bad Santa, I wonder. And I put some notes in the original fanfic, so if you click on the link, it's there. But basically, it's explained he's no longer around, and Ferdinand became high bishop. Yeah. So.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's do chapter 2 since that was a pretty short. Yeah, Veronica too. I'll explain that in the fanfic. Don't worry, she's not around. All right, let's do chapter 2.
Good riddance.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to say the names of your chapters too. You just
Yeah,
gave them.
I'm reading directly from the highlights right now. So yeah, but this
It's
one,
awareness.
Chapter
The next
2,
one.
awareness.
Awareness.
chapter 2, awareness. Ooh, awareness. Okay, that's what. Okay, let's do this.
Yep.
Chapter 2. It took several days for her to be in command of herself once again. Days of wallowing in misery and confusion, even shame, as she relived that humiliating episode in the dedication chamber. Days of seeing in her mind's eye that stricken look in Ferdinand's face and agonizing over what it had meant. The dedication ritual had to go on during those days, but Ferdinand had been merciful enough to let her dedicate her mana alone, even though it was a far less efficient process. They took turns and skirted around each other, though the fact remained that no matter where she went in the temple, she could feel that all-enveloping yet warm and comforting presence, and felt him even more whenever she passed the High Bishop's chamber on her way to the dedication chamber. He was there. What was he doing? Could he feel her pass by as well? Her cheeks warmed, and she was so thankful that she could do the ritual all by herself. She knew it was a brief reprieve. She knew he was accommodating her for now, but soon enough she'd have to go back to normal. Thankfully, her mind and body settled down, and what had seemed an overwhelming sensation became far less obtrusive to her. After 5 days, she felt equal to the task of presenting herself in front of Ferdinand. What's more, she felt she could even look him in the eye. She could talk to him, she was sure. She presented herself to help do paperwork in his chambers as if nothing had happened. He didn't seem surprised at all, and nodded her towards her usual seat. Once there, he gave her an anti-eavesdropping tool and asked her how she was doing. They talked briefly about what had happened. He confirmed that she developed her mana sensing at last, and assured her that what she had experienced was completely normal, before informing her that he had talked with the Archduke and had declined filling additional chalices this year, which meant that they only needed to perform the dedication ritual one more time before finishing. Well, one more time if they did it together. It would take twice as long if they took turns as they'd been doing. Ferdinand's golden eyes rested on her, and his expression was as inscrutable as ever before he asked her,
Will you be all right?
Myne nodded.
Yes, let us finish this.
Tomorrow morning, then.
Ferdinand nodded, satisfied, and retrieved the magic tool, signaling the end of that conversation.
Now, I believe we need to finish these projections for the spring budget. Can you take care of this for me? I have some paperwork from the castle I need to work on.
Of course.
Myne said, eager to get to work. She settled into work in her usual spot, the one at his desk which faced his own chair, and got down to work. Something was wrong with her. Something just had to be wrong with her. Sensing Ferdinand had been one thing. Normal, he'd said. Now that she was reaching, now that she was reaching,
Sorry, I'm not sure what color highlight that is.
That's Ferdinand.
Oh, that was me?
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
All right. Okay, let's go back from the top. Sensing Ferdinand had been one thing,
Normal.
he'd said. Now that she was reaching a marriageable age, it was expected that she develop the ability to sense anyone within her own range. There was absolutely nothing shameful about something that everyone else had to go through. That said, what about this newfound awareness of him? Not just as another vessel of mana, but as a man. It was distracting. Anytime she took off her eyes from her calculations and glanced his way, her eyes were arrested by something about him. First, they had been his hands. They were so strong, yet lean, and they moved elegantly and with such grace that she found it almost painful. Then it was the way his hair fell over his brow as he worked on his accounts. His hair was such a pretty color, and she was immensely satisfied at the thought that it was because of the rinsham she'd invented that it looked so silky soft and touchable. Her hand just itched to sweep it back for him, but the moment she registered that scandalous thought, She chided herself and forced herself to return to her calculations. Sometime later, he asked her a question about some math she'd done days back, and she glanced up and looked at him to answer. As she did, her eyes dwelled on his mouth. She'd always known in a very abstract and detached way that Ferdinand was a handsome man. His features were pleasing and harmonious, but today the curve of his mouth was particularly distracting. She'd seen that mouth curve in amusement or twist in a frown when displeased. He could say the meanest things sometimes, but he could also be gentle, and she'd seen him smile softly, a sight so rare that catching a glimpse of it was on par with seeing something mythical in the flesh. How many times had she tried in the past years to bring out that rare smile? Countless times, but only because she always liked to make other people around her happy. He'd never really been a special case. Now, however, she felt that she could be willing to do or say anything just to make him smile at her like that. His mouth moved, and she realized he was saying something. Myne started and returned her attention to her calculations. And so it happened several times until at last Ferdinand sighed and called an end to work as he rubbed his temples. Myne's brow furrowed. They hadn't even worked half a bell and they were already going to stop? She put her slate down while the rest of the blue priests and their attendants, who had been hard at work, murmured in confusion. But they were all silenced by the High Bishop's command to clear things away and depart.
Myne,
He said as she handed Fran her stationery and other work things.
a moment.
Myne felt her face warm. He hadn't noticed, had he? She expected him to reprimand her or to tell her to stop, but no. He merely informed her about a change in the schedule. Once they finished winter dedication, he needed her to begin transferring her various duties to the people she'd groomed to take on her roles once she'd left.
Your move to the Noble's Quarter is in the summer, but I want to make sure that your successor has everything well in hand. Furthermore, Rosina and your etiquette tutor will need to double down on your training henceforth. To that end, you need not come here to do paperwork after today.
Myne felt the blood on her face drained. Noemi! Myne!
Yeah, I realized I was muted.
Oh my god.
All right, let me read the line again.
Sorry,
Myne
begins
felt
again.
Myne felt the blood on her face drain.
He noticed. He definitely noticed. But Ferdinand.
She opened her mouth to ask him to reconsider, but one look at his impassive face made her stop before she could lower herself to do so. She knew him. She knew him so well that asking him to change his mind at this point was a fruitless endeavor, so she drew from years and years of noble training and nodded in acquiescence with a smile.
As you wish, then. Will that be all?
Ferdinand stood still for a moment, thinking. That he came to some kind of decision.
No, you'll have a visitor in 3 days' time. Be sure to prepare yourself accordingly.
Myne's eyes widened in understanding before she sighed in quiet resignation.
As you wish, Lord Ferdinand.
That's the end of the chapter.
That's the end of the chapter. Yeah, I told you they're short. All right.
She's becoming a sycophantic woman who is fawning over Ferdinand.
I wonder why she's become like that.
I wonder.
Because Ferdinand is perfect and beautiful and...
Oh, don't you start, you simp.
What's wrong with simping for... All right.
You
So,
going, Mark.
all right, let's do this. Next chapter, it is, I think, is it The Promise?
It's I think The Promise.
Okay,
Sorry.
The Promise. All right, this is Ferdinand POV. So let's do this. This was his... By the way, Patrick, now that I thought about it, since it's a Ferdinand POV, you could actually just read this.
Oh, passing off responsibilities, are you?
No, I mean, I'm just proposing it.
Yeah, I can do
Ah,
that.
You want to do it? Awesome. All right. Take it away, Patrick.
He saw her go, never to return to his chambers again. If he had any say in it, relief and grief warred within him as the door shut behind her. Ah, what a mess. What an absolute mess. For once in a very long time, Ferdinand made his way to his hidden chamber to sort out his feelings rather than to work. He slammed the door shut upon the word. Blah. He slammed his door shut upon the world and sank into the chair made by his work table. Huh? And sank onto the chair by his work table. Okay, I'm sorry. He needed to think, plan, and act quickly to contain the damage that was already done. To think that his protege had developed feelings for him. Him! Ferdinand groaned as he cradled his head in his hands. He had always been aware that Myne was a young girl, and young girls could be impressionable, especially once they reached a certain age. So before she even left childhood behind, he'd begun to keep his distance. No more hug sessions during the winter months. No more rides on his high beast during spring prayer. No more chats in his hidden room. Nothing but the same treatment he would have bestowed upon any other disciple of his. Except that no other disciple of his could have been like Myne. Curious, talented, with an intriguing way of thinking and seeing the world that never failed to astonish him. Though they no longer had those frank discussions in the hidden room, they still often met for tea and had long, satisfying talks about everything she was learning, books he'd loaned her, recipes she was developing, and all the wild inventions her workshop was in the middle of producing. And in the winter, it was not uncommon that they'd also spend many hours playing cards or board games as they talked by the fire. This all seems rather romantic.
Hmm.
It had all been proper and above board. Ferdinand leaned back in his chair with a sigh. Who was he kidding? When it came to Myne, he couldn't help but give her preferential treatment. Even his own niece, Charlotte, whom he'd raised to take on the role of Hobbs' successor, really, Charlotte,
Yep.
had not received the same care and nurture that Myne had from him. It had been inevitable that she'd come to think of him as something more than a mentor and a guide. The moment he allowed her to call him Ferdinand only when their closest retainers were around, of course, he'd opened the door to this disastrous misunderstanding. This was his failing and his alone, so it was up to him to fix it. Ferdinand let his mind return to when he'd caught Myne looking at him in a way she'd never done before. She was besotted, and he'd not had the heart to chide or humiliate her in front of everybody. But it had been painful to be the recipient of that tenderness in her eyes, and he'd had to put a stop to it.
why don't you marry the girl yourself?
Karstead had asked him not too long ago. The answer was that he had he had a promise to keep, and he intended to keep it no matter what. 6 years ago, Ferdinand had asked Myne what she wanted from her life, and she'd answered, stupidly of course, to live a life surrounded by books. He'd scolded her and told her to give it serious thought, and to return with a serious answer. 3 days later, she'd returned saying that her answer was the same, for the most part. If he said that entering noble life was inevitable, then she said that her terms would be thus. She wanted to live a life surrounded by books and developing new recipes without having to lose contact with her family and friends in the lower city. She wanted to be able to conduct business even after moving to the noble district to be able to finally take a leading role in the printing industry. She said that if she could meet those demands, she would trust him with everything else, down to her partner. She'd take the etiquette and music and art lessons and all the things that would be required of her, and gladly. She'd kept her end of the bargain, trusting him to arrange things for her, or arrange things with her best interest in mind. But even if he hadn't, he'd still would have had to answer to Gunther. Myne never knew about it, but her father and Ferdinand had had a serious discussion. Gunther, a commoner gate captain, had looked unflinchingly at Ferdinand, an archduke candidate and high bishop of the Ehrenfest temple, and if prepared to fight to the death and as if prepared to fight to the death, and had stated his wishes that Ferdinand not look upon his daughter as a future mistress. That day Ferdinand had sworn that his intentions for Myne were to raise her as his disciple, so that she could live safely and prosperously as she wished, while continuing to contribute
Yep. Yeah, grammar.
to the
Oops.
city and the duchy. Sorry, I'm having a hard time reading as it is. So I'm stumbling over everything.
You're
anyway.
almost there. You're almost there.
In short, a promise was a promise, and he'd promised Gunther to do what was best for Myne, and what was best for Myne was to live out the rest of her days outside of her temple under the protection of a powerful and trustworthy man, and that man would never be him. She might think him hard and unfeeling for what he was about to do, but in a few years' time she would thank him for it. And maybe in a few years' time they'd return to being what they'd once been before, friends. Oh, that's heartbreaking. He could never be her family. That was a foolish notion, but he would settle happily for her friendship. Ferdinand sighed as he drew a piece of paper to him and on it wrote a letter with specific instructions to his trusted retainer, telling him to come in 3 days' time to woo his future goddess of water.
End of chapter. Thank you.
I have pictures in my mind.
You have what? Pictures?
Pictures, yes.
What?
Patrick, I have a question for you. What do you mean, really, Charlotte? What?
Who else? Okay. So
Well,
let me.
so she is a logical choice because Wilfrid was a mess at this time, but
Mm-hmm. Oh! I do want to.
I guess it does make sense because Myne wasn't there to save Wilfrid at the time, so it would make sense that he would say, "Abandon Wilfrid. He's useless. He's corrupted by his grandmother," and I guess it makes sense now that I think about it. It's just I was surprised that he was grooming Charlotte to be the Archduchess instead of Wilfrid.
Now let me just What was it? Noemi?
I was saying, like, he Ferdinand, knowing Ferdinand and how fast he was willing to drop Wilfrid, and Mine was not there.
Yeah.
So it would have gone bad.
Yeah. So also in the very first chapter, I probably should have just led off with this, but in the very first chapter, at the end of the chapter, I put a note. Yeah. So let me just read the note so you guys will know. So you may be wondering, what is the point of divergence from the canon, from the original story? So where does that things changed? So the Trombe examination, the Trombe extermination incident. So in this story, Karsta did not assign Shigikoza as one of the guard knights, so Myne was never harmed. She never had to display such an overwhelming amount of mana for show. No noble went as far as to try to kidnap Myne, and if they were claimed close to it, in my timeline, in this alternate reality, it works out so that before anything could be set in motion, Ferdinand already plotted and schemed enough to bring down the High Bishop and Veronica in one fell swoop. Also, Wilfrid, here's the question. Wilfrid failed in his debut and was discarded as heir. Charlotte took his place. Meanwhile, Myne just keeps a low profile over the years, churning out inventions, selling them anonymously through Benno and the Guildmaster's help, while reaping in enormous profits. Myne still does printing, but has groomed people to run the industry for her, and in any case, the Archduke's daughter, Charlotte, has taken over so that she's the face of the industry. So she kind of takes credit for everything. All Myne does is receive money for it and give advice here and there and just develop new stuff. So that's...
So, Sea Serpent has a question. Why not Melchior?
Why not Melchior? I don't know. I just
He's
thought...
a child!
So during the time, I'm going to explain it later, but it just happens to be Charlotte during that time, because Charlotte was closer to Wilfrid in that age. So I think because you wanted to like set people up like competing and have him fail and be discarded altogether, Ferdinand was like, I'm just gonna like raise her up, and he chose her. Yeah. And besides, she's the cutest and she deserves everything. So yes, yay for Charlotte for Ob.
Charlotte for Ob.
Yeah, she deserves.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's actually kind of why I was like Charlotte for Ob. I wanted to let her have this. Yeah, and we can have Melchior be a student for Ferdinand. He probably just was like, I don't know. You guys can invent whatever Melchior little side plot you want. That's totally cool. So let's see. That was. Let me just close a few tabs here so people can read.
So, at this point, I'm boiling. Like
Why are you boiling? Oh no! Don't cry.
The chapter.
So the next chapter is
Besties. Lower City Bestie.
Lower City Bestie. This is chapter 4, and this is... So here's another thing about Bookworm is I always wanted Frida and Myne to be friends. I don't know, I just want them to be friends, you know? So I decided that in this AU, they would be besties. They would actually be like preparing to together move to the nobles district as fellow, well, yeah. Yeah, so that's what's
Fellow concubines.
yes, fellow concubines. Yeah. There you go. So Frida is still has still her arrangement with what's his name?
I don't know.
Yeah, Henrik, I think that's his name. I keep forgetting his...
Daniel's brother.
Daniel's brother. She's still... So, okay. Alright, so let's continue on to do this chapter 2.
Let's go. It's me and Frida. Time.
So I'll be reading that.
And I have a whole chapter as a break.
Yes.
I had the last one. You have this one.
Alright, let's do this. Lower City Bestie. Myne, are you listening? Myne blinked.
Oh, excuse me. What did you say?
I asked your thoughts on the spring menu for the tea room. Myne glanced down at the luxuriously textured paper where Frida had written down a list of dishes and sweets for the joint venture. Her golden eyes scanned the items and, after suggesting some changes based on the availability of ingredients at that time of year, returned the paper with a forlorn sigh. Myne, what's going on? Frida asked, unable to keep her concern to herself any longer. I thought you'd be so excited. Are you feeling ill? Myne shook her head.
No, not at all.
Then what is it? I was already worried that you came to me instead of summoning me to the temple. Do you... She lowered her voice after a quick glimpse around the room. Do you wish to talk? Myne nodded. Nobles had anti-eavesdropping devices for occasions like these, when they needed to talk in private, while their attendants stood by. But being commoners and having no access to such tools until they moved to the nobles' quarter, they would have to bend the rules a little. Everyone, please clear the room, Frida said in a voice that brooked no argument. Her servants moved to obey immediately. Delia, who accompanied Myne that morning, stayed in place, as expected.
Delia, please stay outside as well.
Myne said, and because Delia dared not contradict her mistress in another person's house, she also stepped outside with the rest of the servants, though she did not look happy to do so. Once they were all gone, Frida got out from her chair and sat down next to her friend and held her hands. At the contact, Myne's face twisted and she began to cry.
Oh, Frida, what am I going to do?
About what? Myne? Myne, you need to tell me what the problem is. Have you run into some production problems? I doubt it is money, but if it is, you only need to ask. Is it money? The orphanage? What is it? Please tell me what I can do to help.
I'm just scared, Frida. Aren't you the least bit scared about leaving everything behind?
Frida blinked in surprise. This had come out of nowhere. For years, Myne had faced the future, planned and talked about it without so much as an indication that she was unhappy about it. And now... But I won't be leaving everything behind, and I won't be alone for too long either. You and I are going to set up more and more businesses together, right? Myne wiped the tears from her eyes and gave a laugh.
Yes, of course we'll be together, and we'll open our own book cafe.
The official name would be Lady Salon, but Frida did not correct her friend since she seemed to have brightened up at the prospect. That's the spirit. Myne smiled and gave her friend's hands a reassuring squeeze before releasing them.
I'm feeling so silly. I think I just miss my family. I can't wait until spring prayer I can't wait until spring prayer is completed. Then I can return to them. It's so lonely in the temple.
Frida couldn't help but wonder at her friend's words. Myne had not seemed particularly lonely in recent years. The High Bishop had never given her a moment's rest, she'd always said laughing. Between the paperwork, the orphanage, the strict lessons, and her time reading, and the temple work itself as custodian of the holy artifacts and the bookroom, Myne had hardly ever had a spare moment. Frida had met Myne's boss a few times, and she imagined that working day in and day out with the High Bishop would fray at anyone's nerves, but Myne didn't seem to mind her mentor's ways at all. So, what was it?
I've been receiving more and more visits from my future lord,
Myne said carefully. Frida perked up. Myne hardly ever talked about the lord she'd be spending her future with. All she knew was that he was an arch-noble knight who was a trusted associate of Lord Ferdinand's. Myne had met him a few times over the years, but that was it. Frida latched on to the chance to learn more about him. I see. I hope he's been bringing you gifts. Even Heinrich has been thoughtful enough to give me a few things here and there when I visit, now that I'm closer and closer to coming of age.
He brought me fresh flowers and books.
Frida gasped. Flowers? Not the ones frozen in time, but fresh ones? That was quite a gift indeed.
Yes, but books, Frida. He brought me books too.
Oh, yes. I forget you're a bit obsessed with that. Oh, how wonderful that he understands you. He seems to be a good man.
Oh my god. Yes, Freddy. I mean the High Bishop. Close. God damn it.
Yes, Freddie. I mean, the High Bishop
Chose.
can't read. Chose well for me.
Come on, I had to read a whole chapter. You can't do this.
I can do it. Chose well for me. I think I'm going to miss my family and Mr. Benno, Mark, and Lutz. It just wouldn't be the same anymore.
Frida sat still in her seat as she processed Myne's words. Her prodigious brain, which she used to make mental math to calculate profit, budget projections, and investment dividends, worked overtime as she came to one horrifying conclusion. Myne was in love, and the prospect of leaving her heart behind in the lower city was bringing her down. Frida felt anger flare deep within. Lutz! Since their first meeting, Lutz was always making trouble for Frida. And now that she was looking forward to spending her days joyfully in the noble's quarter with her best friend, he was also getting in the way of their happiness. Would he ever stop? Well, Frida knew one thing Myne didn't know yet, and that was the rumors going around about Lutz and Tully. It seemed that they were courting, but hadn't yet made things official. Tully was hardly able to go to the temple these days because work at Karina's was always consuming her time, and she hadn't much spare time. But if Frida contacted the Gilberta company and asked for a dress, Tully would surely be among the employees that they sent over. End of chapter. Yeah, her prodigious brain came to the wrong conclusion. Poor Lutz.
I was going to say.
Goodness gracious, this is so good.
Oh my gosh, the comments in that one are hilarious.
I know the comments at the end of chapters sometimes.
Let's see. I want to think. Oh my gosh, there were some comments in that chapter that made me really laugh a lot, because
to go read them, they're so good. There's 5 minutes left anyway. We don't have time for another chapter.
Yeah, that's true. We don't have time for another chapter. It is already that time. You guys, can we just probably do one more? Probably the Eustace chapter.
1 second. Akihana has Akihana, the High Bishop, is Ferdinand.
Yes.
Because they were writing about the fact that they're like,
Yeah, so Ferdinand in this fanfic is the High Bishop. She is just a regular shrine maiden, and so sometimes they call Ferdinand as High Bishop. So if you ever see High Bishop, it's basically Ferdinand. Yes,
it's a baby boy Ferdy.
All right.
Next chapter.
Let's do one more chapter. I would have loved to do another one, but probably we'll see.
That's a good one.
It's the same length, I think, as this one, or a little longer. But this is Eustace POV.
Yep.
So
Eustace and Eckhart.
Yes, we have Eustace and Eckhart. So I'm gonna do narrating for this one, unless you want to do the narrating, Vincent.
And now I have a feeling I cannot say no.
I mean, it would be great because it's a male point of view, but I can't force you to it. Are you down for it? Yes. Or no?
Luckily, your writing is easier to read than the original writing.
Oh my god! Web novel.
Yes, it is. That's true. So okay, let's do.
So I'm reading for Eckhart, correct?
Yes, you're reading for Eckhart. Vincent is doing Eustace and narrating as well. All right.
Eckhart is the green one.
Hey, Magpie. I think the next time we do one of these read-alongs, you should have Noemi read a whole chapter herself. Let her experience this pain.
I am so down to do that.
Okay, I have a few chapters in mind that she can read.
Yes!
All right.
You're gonna make me read the dramatic ones, aren't you?
All right, let's do this. Eustace will be read by Vincent. Let's do it. Go, Vincent.
Justus now his master. He knew him, he flattered himself, better than anyone else in the world, so he was not surprised in the least when halfway through winter he, Eckhart, and Lasfam received orders from Lord Ferdinand with urgent and highly specific instructions. First, flowers. Every week, gifts of sweet and flowers, literally fresh flowers, not the euphemistic sort, of course.
Magpie, why?
I have no idea what this means.
Basically, not
Well,
not
Not the
women.
flower offerings.
No women.
okay. This euphemistic. Okay. Well, of course, we are to be prepared and we are to be given to the blue shrine maiden. The flowers could come from Lord Ferdinand's own greenhouse, since he had a few ornaments varieties growing there. But if nothing was in the bloom, the last femme was instructed to purchase them from any noble greenhouse, the Archduke's own greenhouse, if necessary. Nothing but the best would do, the letter had said, and Lasfam accepted the instructions without comment. Justus admired that of the man. Lay noble he might be, but he was an exemplary attendant as an archnoble, and he obeyed the master unquestionably. Now the flowers were to be given to Eckhart, who would henceforth be visiting the temple every week without fail to call upon Myne until she moved to her new abode in the noble quarter after coming of age. Eckhart had almost choked in surprise. Relax, Justus said, pausing from reading the letter out loud. He has provided her a generous allowance to purchase said sweets and drinks so it wouldn't come out of your pocket.
It's not about the money. I can't afford that much.
Well, whatever other question or concerns you might have, please keep them in until I'm done. Remember, this is for your future goddess of water. You would be wise to expert yourself and win her over, since all of us are giving you your support. Eckhart gave him a sullen look.
You're just mocking me. I know it.
I assure you, my friend, I'm not, Justus said with a sign. His own task was worst of them all, and it spoke volumes of his lord's fame of mind. Lord Ferdinand had set in motion a plan that absolutely reeked of desperation, of panic. His lord was in mitigation mode, and he been completely blindsided by something or someone, Justus guessed, and now he was trying to undo the damage. Justus didn't know to have it spelled out. He himself had anticipated this trouble months before, perhaps even years. Myne had come into his master's life and shaken most every aspect of his life when no one else had been able to. She brought down Lord Ferdinand's defenses and somehow carved a space for herself in his lord's life and heart. Justus had seen signs of it in the singular care Lord Ferdinand had of his prized discipline. He had a suspicion about how much he cared for the girl years back when they all spent the best part of a year collecting the ingredients for her juvenile, and how he worried and threatened during her long sleep. He deemed it in a way he ordered the best teachers for the girl, and in the way Ferdinand had unconsciously pitted Charlotte against Myne when he began to educate his niece. Lady Charlotte was incredibly accomplished and was truly a credit to her uncle's effort in raising her to become the next up. But when it came down to it, Ferdinand looked upon Myne's achievements with greater pride. Pride like that of a doting parent? Justus himself in thought, tapping the letter against his lips as he considered what it all meant. He had always pondered the question, What was the nature of such affection and care? Justus had always been troubled by it, and had clung on to the smallest hope that neither one cared for the other in any way that would bring a headache in the end. But it seemed that he was getting his answer at least, and his heart ached for his lord.
And you? What will you be doing, Eustace?
Assisting Laspham, of course. He smiled mutelessly, helping prepare your love nest in time for summer.
What?
Eckhart exclaimed, sounding almost outraged. Now, Justus said smoothly. I will also be helping you prepare a courtship stone. Eckhart shook his head.
That's not the issue here. Look, Myne and I are not going to be married. There is nothing. There will be none of that between us. I'll only be her protector, so that necessary.
It is Lord Ferdinand's order. Besides, it doesn't mean you two will have a star binding ceremony. It's customary to give such gifts to your future goddess of water. And don't worry, you have until spring. I will help if you require it.
I don't require it.
Eckhart said, and then scoffed under his breath.
I can make that at least. I just wish he wouldn't take so much upon himself and burden you with all these instructions. I am perfectly capable of doing things on my own.
I'm sure you are, Justus said, picking up the letter and resuming reading out loud the content. Springtime was a busy time for all of them. After a winter of wooing and visiting, Eckhart managed to break through to his future goddess of water. She lost that frightening and nervous look she had the first time he came to visit her. What's more, they are all gathered to celebrate on the day he managed to make her laugh. Progress indeed, Justus thought with chagrin. Chagrin. How much of her joy had been born out of delight for the books Eckhart had brought her, and how much had been born out of Myne's delight at Eckhart himself. As winter began to give way to spring, Eckhart volunteered to accompany Myne as part of her entourage during spring prayer. She had eagerly accepted his offer, as it meant that she could travel by high beast rather than carriage. Justus had accepted Lord Ferdinand to say that it would be unsightly and improper for Myne to ride in Eckart's high beast, but he agreed to it readily enough, saying that Myne always grew much too ill when she had to do all the travelling by carriage. Justus hoped with all his heart that these days away from the temple would help strengthen the bond. As to his lord, he went about as usual. Justus would have been fooled seeing just how composed he was, except that the level of planning Ferdinand was putting into Myne's future home was bordering on the excessive. As a mere concubine, she would obviously have no place anywhere near the Lindbergh's house, and she was not to occupy Eckhart's personal residence, which was similarly in the Archnoble section. But settling in the Lane Noble section was also out of the question. The plots and the houses were smaller, and Lord Ferdinand had decreed that her house not be near nor far, nor face the vile temple of Triumph, but ordered that they found a house that faced neither north or west. My god, magpie. Use dots. So they settled for the mad novel section, a house fit for a wealthy mad novel. 2 with rooms upon rooms to spare, and a large garden with plenty of rooms left in the case she wanted to add buildings in the future. The best gardeners and landscapers were called to design the grounds, and they planned a topiary of whimsical fabulous. They used vast quantities of magic to grow the crops and then applied their craft to shaping them into the desired shape. They were winged horses, shoe mills, centis, birds, and pair of winged lions that guarded the entrance to a private witchery. This witchery was a charming corner in the garden that was a bit more secluded than the rest. This section had a reflection pond and a lovely gazebo surrounded by all manners of sweet-smelling flowers. Justus has mixed feelings about that garden, and saw how unfortunate it was that they had chosen winged lions in the entrance. But that was done, and anyway, he needed to focus on his most important aspect of the house, its interior. He left the decoration of the interior house to Lasfem. Thank the gods that man has impeccable taste. For Justus was hopeless in that respect. And Eckhart, a man of action, was similarly left at the loose since he could not involve his mother in helping him establish a house for his mistress. Especially not when she was at him every day to found a wife and marry. Justus was tasked with finding attendants and servants for the house, while Eckhart had only to worry about courting the girl. It was summer when Justus and Lasfem finally turned their attention to the bookworm. Justus had dreaded his task, but Lord Ferdinand had given his orders, and there was no point arguing. It had been many years that Lord Ferdinand had tasked his servants with reorganizing the bookworm according to the Myne decimal system. Lord Ferdinand had the largest collection of books in Ehrenfest, probably in all Jürgen and the task had been monumental. But had all been worth it. The system made perfect logic sense. Every book could be found in a matter of seconds, and that was more. Justus had been able to categorize every book, plank, and scroll. To think that this catalog would come in handy when it came to decimating this Lord's own collection, save for a few volumes, or all else that was not magic related was moved to Myne's bookroom. Justus and Lasfem and the rest of all the servants really almost wept as they carefully packed the books away so they could line the shelves in Myne's new home. Once the books were carted away, Justus remained standing alone in his master's bookroom, mourning over the empty shelves and the gutted feel to the room. He breathed in the lingering smell of the ink, paper, the lever reminding how this place had one point been Lord Ferdinand's refuge. He hadn't seen it himself, but he had heard from older servants about it, about how in his childhood and youth his Lord Ferdinand had retreated into his room to hide away from Veronica's assault and her venom. But now his lord refuse was no more. The room, much like his master's heart, had been pillaged, and its contents unquestionably belonged to the book-loving shrine maiden Myne. What a pity it was that she had been too young to understand his lord. Maybe, if she had been a little older, she would have come to care for him. But she was just a child, and she was obviously too blind to see the merits of his lord. Justus Signet forced himself to shake off his melancholy. The summer coming of age was in a few days' time, and there was not a moment to lose. So he resolved as she shut the door to what? So he resolved as she shut the door to the bookworm case were wasting time on pointing what if and impossible wishes. It was too late anyway. It was all, or?
That's all. End of chapter.
That's all.
That's all.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you. All right. So that is the last chapter I think we'll be reading today. But yeah, that's basically the first couple of chapters. There's 2 more chapters that comprise the intro of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for reading that. You guys did so well. It's kind of new to because I know that a lot of us when we read the Bookworm, we had already been knew what was going on. But here I'm just throwing all these random things at you guys and oh my gosh, there's these feelings and this, yeah. So anyway, you guys are doing so good.
Feelings.
I have read and reread this thing over and over again because of course I have to do edit or corrections or whatever. So I'm just listening. I'm yep, that's right. That's how it goes. So no surprises for me, but you guys did really well considering there were a lot of things that were new to you guys.
Yeah, we learned much about you.
Yeah.
Much of it is confirmation of what we already knew.
Yeah.
Come on, you guys. You guys know I love my drama. I love, yeah. So
You also
So
love your
much
Ferdinand.
drama in here. Oh my god.
What?
We just scratched the surface of the drama.
I hope that's.
I was gonna say I'll be sure to listen to this later, re-listen to the live stream later.
Oh, have
Please
fun.
do so. You have to do it.
Oh, this is a fun
And
time.
comment, and subscribe.
Oh yes, that
Yes,
is
yes.
true.
Support your magpie. Give her the monies.
Yes, do support the channel. Actually, in this one, since I'm not monetized, you probably can't really do much more than subscribe. But what you do,
I noticed.
what you
We
can
have
do,
to get her to 500 so she can. Well, no, it's 1,000 so she can be monetized.
Yes, spread word far and wide.
Yeah.
This
I
is
was
a good
wondering why I
channel.
couldn't donate.
yes. So
At 500, we can start donating. So
nice.
And we will continue to embarrass our magpie.
So what you
Yeah.
can do is you can just go straight to the Ko-fi page. You can just donate through there if you want. But
yes.
and also just plugging in, I have read other books. So if you want to read other stuff that's not, super angsty, I highly encourage you to go read. What book isn't angsty, you guys? The Blue Castle? The Blue Castle is a fun
Blue
one.
Castle is not that angsty. Blue Castle's good.
Blue Castle is good.
Weird. It's almost as if, just like Kazuki-sensei does really good with romance novels, you also do good with angsty novels.
Actually, I have to say though, I cut my teeth on romance novels, so I'm primarily a romance novel writer, which means that I am a romance novel reader.
You haven't read the other fanfic she's released. Those are romance-centric.
I
I
actually,
really haven't read any of her fanfics yet.
speaking
I like
of
one of them
which-
specifically. As one of them is my favorite. But
I'm not sure which one it is, but let me just link one that I did. If you already finished pre-pub, this is absolutely safe to read. And that is Schlaftrum's Blessings. So you can
That's a
check
good
that one
one.
out. I think I've already shared it here and in the other channel as well, but you can check that one out. And I put it on the chat if you want the link to that.
I definitely recommend reading any fanfic of generally.
Yeah.
Especially for
Yeah, there were several people here listening who are either fanfic writers or fanfic readers. So do go to Archive of Our Own and check out the stuff. There's so much to choose from.
There's a good community. There's a good community around it.
Yeah.
There's quite a few.
A lot of stuff might not be completed yet, but there's a few good ones that are either very long that you can read through, and there's others that are, they're just check them out. Again, there's something for everybody. Just always remember to check out the tags. This is something that I always say about any fanfic, especially things like this one. They just see if it's not your cup of tea, then just don't read it.
I will put a very, very fast disclaimer. The Ascendance of a Bookworm fandom is not very good at tagging stuff most of the time, so be careful when you thread through to some of the stuff. Sometimes they aren't tagged.
That's a bias.
Yeah.
It's not a bias. It's something I've noticed when I read is that most of them don't have any tags at all.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's usually not a problem for most readers, but there are a lot of readers who need like trigger warnings or other stuff. I know I was reading one and somebody mentioned pregnancy and somebody was like, oh, this is something that I wish it had been tagged and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, so just watch out.
Be careful to the non-tag ones.
Or like,
most of them are wholesome.
Or like some of them, they kill off characters and it just catches you by surprise because there's no tag.
Yep.
So yeah.
When they don't tag major character death. And you're
It's
not
a
ready for
spoiler.
that.
It's a spoiler to tag that.
I know, so you have to balance out whether you want to be spoiled or do you want to spoil your readers or do you want to warn them? So my approach to it, the best medium I've been able to do is, if you notice in Myne, I have a whole bunch of spoilery, let's just say, tags.
Oh, they're good tags.
But as I go, when I know like something's gonna pop up, that's when I add the tag. So I don't add. I know what's gonna happen. There's gonna have to be a few more tags added, but if I add them now, people will be like spoiled. So I don't add them until the chapter when it happens. So that's why other additional tags need to be added on this one.
Yes, I've noticed.
Mm-hmm. So I am actually really happy that I saw some people that came over from my fanfic. I actually updated chapter 9. I thought I'm on chapter 96. Yes, this thing is rather long. So I had to put the announcement on chapter 97, and unfortunately some people were like, I'm disappointed because I thought this was going to be an update. Don't worry, I will put the update soon. I'm working on it. Just have a little patience. But yeah, so to those of you who visited here from AO3 and just are hanging out here, thank you for joining. I hope you come in again. I usually have read-alongs on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. So maybe one or all or none of the same readers will be here, depending on the time zones. I'll
try to be here.
Yeah, I hope that you guys will be. I think it's going to be in the afternoon, like closer to 4. So
I should be done with school, so I'll be fine because school is starting again soon.
Oh, fun times! I don't want to go back to that time. By the way, Red Tempest says this is my very first Ascendance of a Bookworm fanfic. Oh boy, are you in for a treat! I think you'll enjoy this one.
Gracious, good luck.
I think
the same.
This is good.
Good luck for your mental health.
Oh, come on. No, I mean, don't be that way. It's not that bad. No, I mean, would have you guys believe that this is like absolute nightmare. It's not. I promise you, it's just like the introduction to set kind of like the stage. It's a little bit angsty, but it's not all just pain. It's not all just pain and suffering. Okay, so Noemi. All right. So, and also want to say hello to the people that moved over from the other server, from the other channel that joined us. I put the announcement there and also in X. So if you're here from there and you subscribe, thank you so much. I hope that you enjoy it. All right. And I think that's about it for today. We will see you then on Monday afternoon, I hope. hope this time doesn't change, but count on it for 4 p.m. Pacific. All right.
See you there.
Yeah, or if not, we'll see you for the Hannelore chit chat. But do join me, because usually I get nervous when I go live, but I get even more nervous now because this is something that I write. So if like nobody shows up, it just means that my writing was really bad.
So Magpie,
Oh
I
my
can
God.
give you immediately feedback. I think
now.
it was the second chapter for you are writing like Ferdinand is doing nothing special for Myne, what he was not do for his other apprentices. My mind connected in a moment noticed Ferdinand on his high beast together with Raymond flying around.
Ferdinand and Raymond. No.
Because this is what my mind will do. Because you said
I can
he
show
had
you
done
the
nothing
world.
before mine. What he would not do with his others.
No. No. Okay, that's cursed. That's a cursed image. Stop it.
Shining, simmering
So-
sun is...
Akihana asks, when is the Discord read along for Hannelore Year 5? We're gonna have that on Monday as well. I'm already clearing
Monday.
up that. So,
Monday, what time?
I think it's gonna have to be Europe time. So it's gonna have to be
In the morning?
In the morning, yeah.
It's fine.
All right.
When the goddess of Technogirl will give us his attention. Or her attention.
Yeah, but that's a server only thing. So we'll talk about that off the live. So yeah, otherwise we'll see you on Monday, or if not on Tuesday. But please come on Monday. I will cry if you guys don't show up. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Say goodbye, gang, and thank you so much to all those who read. Patrick and Vincent and Noemi, and to Teal, who also highlighted. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Until next Monday. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye, chat.
Bye bye.
Aloha.
We off?
Yes, we're off. Okay. Ugh.